Good morning.
Morning. Good morning, Pastor.
Good morning.
I'm
Good
good to
morning.
see you.
Shalom. Shalom. Long time no
Shalom,
see
shalom.
you.
Yeah, I know.
1 week is long time.
Too long, too
Yes.
long.
Yes.
So the antenna is working now. Everything is good.
Everything working. I fish everything last week. You know about all this equipment. Sometimes some equipment coming, not working good.
Yeah,
But thank God.
very good.
Thank
Very
God,
good.
thank God, everything working now. What we have for
Excellent.
today? What we have for today?
Okay, so there are several things that I need to share with you
Yes.
for today. First of all, today is the Holocaust Memorial Day.
Yes. Yes.
So we are remembering the 6 million Jews that died during the Holocaust because of anti-Semitism,
Yes.
because of hatred against the Jews. And we're going to see that today. We're going to see that with Gaza and the Philistines and how this spirit of anti-Semitism actually is continuing even to today.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes.
And another thing that happened today, and this is the latest news of today, we have new accusations from the Palestinian Authority saying that Israel have not provided the Palestinians with the vaccine. And this is, again, another lie of the Palestinian Authority. Because according to the agreement that we have with the Palestinians in 1994, the health of the Palestinian people in the West Bank and Gaza is in the hands of the Palestinian Authority and is not in the hands of Israel. This was agreed in 1994, okay?
Okay.
So how can they be accusing us of not providing them with a vaccine when in fact it's not our responsibility? However, this has gone to the United Nations. The United Nations believe the lie and they're accusing Israel of not providing the Palestinians with a vaccine. And the reality is the opposite. And let me tell you, Pastor, that Israel has done everything to help the Palestinians. They have trained nurses, they have trained their doctors, they have helped the Palestinians to reach, to acquire vaccines from Russia.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it's just unbelievable. It's unbelievable, and this is anti-Semitism. Yeah, why is the United Nations believing everything that the Palestinian is telling them? Wow. Why they are accusing us without actually checking the facts on the ground?
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. And the world believes the lie. This is the amazing thing. They don't check what's actually on the ground. They don't check the facts. They just accuse. Yeah, because this is what the Palestinians been doing for the past 100 years, is accusing Israel for the purpose of delegitimizing Israel, for the purpose of saying, look how evil these Jews are.
People, yes,
yeah,
yes.
This is anti-Semitism, yeah? And the United Nations believe this. And it's incredible. It's incredible.
Sister Sonia,
yes,
only I wanted to show, call you one question. The head department for the Palestinian people, the Palestinian people have his own head department?
Yes, they have their own government.
Okay.
They have Abbas,
wow,
who is the head of the Palestinian Authority.
Wow.
Who is actually should be in charge of the health of the people of Palestine, yeah, of the Palestinian people. All right? What do? Instead of actually saying we need to get the vaccines, and Israel, by the way, is helping them to get the vaccine.
Wow.
had contacted the Russians. The Russians are going to provide them with the vaccines, and they're coming in March for them. Okay? Because the Israelis have done this.
Wow.
Yeah? And yet, they're accusing us. Unbelievable. It's just incredible. Incredible. And the United Nations believes it. You know, I mean, what's going on? What is going on, Pastor? You know, it's just unbelievable. Okay?
And today is beautiful day to let it know the people, because today is the anniversary for the Holocaust in Germany. I think it is something we have to talk about that, because right now in Germany, this anti-Semitism to the Jewish people is coming again.
Yes, sir.
It's coming again.
Yes, sir.
It's not only in Germany, either here in the United States, and some place it's coming. Yeah.
Terrible, terrible. Anyway, so what we're going to talk about today is we are going to talk about the Philistines. First of all, we're going to look at the history of the area where the Philistines were, which is the area where Gaza is, and all the city of the Philistines, and how these have actually passed, this spirit of hatred against the Israelites in the time of the Philistines have passed to this generation into hatred against the Jews, exactly in the same area. And this is fascinating. Yeah. And we're going to look at the Philistines and the Palestinians in Gaza. What I already have done this in Spanish. So for those the people that would like to see it in Spanish, you can actually look in the videos in my channel and you'll be able to see it. But this is for the English community, the English speaking community. So we're doing it in English. And the amazing thing is that we have not just the accusation of today that we haven't supposedly provided the vaccines for the Palestinians, but we have continuous accusations from the international community regarding the situation in Gaza. One of the accusations is that we have blockaded Gaza. Okay? Now you should know, the people should know that Gaza have a terrorist organization running Gaza, and Israel have put a wall around Gaza so that the terrorists do not enter Israel. And of course we have to blockade so that the armaments don't go into the Gaza Strip, okay? But we allow everything else to go in, like food and medication and petrol and water and electricity and everything else that they need. And this is what I'm going to show you. I'm going to show you what the accusations are, and I'm going to show you what the reality is, what the facts on the ground are, okay? Another accusation against Israel is that we have built a wall. Yeah, you know, if you have terrorists inside the Gaza Strip, would you let them come into your country without any problem?
No.
You will not let them come. You will put a border on so that you need to protect your own citizens, right? And therefore, this is what Israel has done. Another accusation that we get is that we actually use disproportionate force against the Palestinians in Gaza. And this is nonsense, because the Gazans have thrown thousands of missiles into Israel, and Israel only responds when we actually get thrown missiles at us. So it's the opposite, the truth, okay? And I'm going to show you that. I'm going to show you that in this study. And another lie is that the accusation that Israel is occupying Gaza, even to today. And this is incredible, because Israel, no Israeli, no Jew is inside of Gaza. we have given Gaza back to the Palestinians in 2005. So how can they say to us that we actually occupying Gaza? In what way are we occupying Gaza? Okay, and this is over and over and over again, lies after lies after lie. And I'm going to show you this. I'm going to put the record straight. Okay.
Yes.
But nevertheless, you should know that everything to do with Gaza is in my book. It's called The Contested Ownership of Israel. You can go and get it, and you'll be able to read it. In Spanish, is Polémica Territorial de Israel. If you would like to read it, it's on Amazon. You can get it.
Beautiful.
Okay. Now, you should know that Gaza is actually part of the 5 Palestinian cities, 5 Philistine cities 3,000 years ago. Okay? The Philistines actually came into the land, in my opinion, already in the 18th century BC. The scholars of today, they say the 12th century BC. I'm going to show you what's the problem with that in a minute.
Yep.
But there are 5 cities, which is Ashkelon, Ashdod, Gaza, Ekron, and Gat.
Brother Pastor Daniel live in Ashkelon.
In Ashkelon, yes. So Ashkelon used to be part of the Philistine cities. Today is a Jewish city. Beautiful. Now, Gaza is in the hands of the Palestinians today, yeah? But it was in the hands of the Philistines 3,000 years ago. So what I'm doing is I'm going to the biblical history of Gaza first, and then I'm going to go to the new history of Gaza later on, okay? So you have the 5 cities of the Philistines, and when did the Philistines actually came into the land? And there is a disagreement between the biblical scholars and the scholars and what the Bible is telling us, okay? So I'm going to tell you what the biblical scholars are saying, which is partly true. And let me tell you what they say. They say that the Philistines are actually called the sea people. Why the sea people? They actually lived in the Aegean Sea, which is over here. And in the 12th century BC, they came, the society in the Aegean Sea actually collapsed. There was hunger, and there was all kinds of problems in the society. And the Philistines decide to leave the area of the Aegean Sea and immigrate. Okay, and this is true. We know this from history.
Yes.
Now, what they do in the 12th century BC, some of them come by land into the Promised Land, and others actually came by sea. I remember that they're called the sea people.
Yeah.
They come and attack Egypt originally. But Ramesses III, who was actually the son of Ramesses II, who was dealing with Moses, if you remember that.
Yes.
Ramesses III actually kicked them out of Egypt, and they went and settled in the 5 cities here in the southwest of the Promised Land. Yeah. Okay, so Gaza, Ashkelon, Ekron, Gad, all of them are actually here where my arrow is.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So this is in the 12th century BC. Now, what happens is then the Bible already telling us that Abraham in the 18th century BC, he was already dealing with the Philistines. Okay, so we know that Abraham, who was actually in Beersheba, was dealing with the Philistines, was very close to Gaza, and dealing with them. Remember Abimelech in Genesis 21?
Yes.
Abraham actually makes a treaty with Abimelech, regarding water in the desert. Yeah, this is actually very important in the desert to have water, and there was a disagreement, and Abraham already makes a treaty with the Philistines. And this is a Philistine king, Abimelech, already there in the 18th century BC. So there is a disagreement between the scholars and what the Bible is telling us. What the scholars are saying is the Bible got it wrong, okay? But that's not true. That is not true. Why is not true? Because in Genesis 10, we see the descendants of Noah. Do you remember the descendants of Noah?
Yes,
In Genesis 10, verse 6, Genesis 10, verse 6 is telling us that one of the sons of Noah, who is Ham, the sons of Ham were Cush, which Cush is Ethiopia and Sudan, Mitzrayim, which is Egypt, okay, Put, Libya, and Canaan, which is the promised land, yeah? So these sons of Ham actually had territories, had landmass. It wasn't just the names of them, they were princes, yeah? And they actually became famous, and therefore they had some land, and they had like different tribes, yeah?
Yes.
And it's interesting that Mitzrayim was not translated. This is why the scholars having a problem with finding where the Philistines come from, yeah? So Mitzrayim is actually Egypt. Now in verse 13, it's telling us the descendants of Mitzrayim. And look at the descendants of Mitzrayim. This is which is Egypt. He begot Ludim, Ananim, Lechabim, Neftuhim, Patrusim, and Kasluhim, from whom came
the
Philistines.
Yeah.
Okay, so what we can actually see here, that the Philistines, before they went to the Aegean Sea, before they were here, they were actually Egyptians.
Okay.
And if they are Egyptians, that means that they could be, with no problem, in the 18th century BC, on the way to the promised land, yeah, they can be here without any problem whatsoever, yeah, because it's next door. Can you see that?
Yes.
The only thing they need to do is to take the Via Maris. There is the Via Maris. This is actually the principal route in the ancient world to go from Africa to Europe and Asia. The passage through was the promised land. So what they did, they actually came through here.
Wow.
Yeah, and this is where the Philistines were. And remember that when Moses comes out of Egypt, he doesn't take the Via Maris. Why? You see, if he took the Via Maris to the promised land, it would take him 2 weeks to get to the promised land, walking. Yeah? But it took him 40 years. Why he didn't go through why didn't he go through the Via Maris to the promised land? Because the Philistines were on the way.
Okay.
Okay? So the Philistines were already there when the Israelites getting out of Egypt. Yeah? Can you see that?
Yes,
okay?
Yes.
So we determine from what the Bible is telling us that the Philistines were already there by the 18th century BC, and Abraham was already dealing with them in the 18th century BC. Later on in the 12th century BC, another load of Philistines came in that came from the Aegean Sea.
Sister Sonia, the people from the Shia people, is the people today live on Greek?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
They were from all that area in the Greek area, the Aegean Sea.
Yes.
The Greek islands. Very good.
Yes.
Okay, but they originally come from Egypt.
Yes.
And it's interesting that when they actually attack, before they actually come into the 5 cities, they come and attack Egypt. Yeah, they originate from Egypt and they come and attack Egypt. Can you see that?
Yep.
Yeah, and Ramesses III actually expelled them in the 12th century BC. Okay, all right. So here you have how the Philistines look like. You can see the funny hat that they had. And you should know that the Israelites actually had a problem, very big problem with the Philistines, because
the technology. They had the steel. They had the steel. They had the technology for the steel. Sir.
They had iron chariots.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes.
These were the tanks of the ancient world. So the Philistines actually controlled the plain, and the Israelites were in the mountains. Yeah, were away from the Philistines. Okay? Yeah. Why? Because they had chariots made out of iron. And they were technologically more developed than the Israelites were.
Yes.
Yeah? And therefore, the Israelites could not actually defeat them. Okay? Now, when would they have defeated? When they could have defeated them is in the time of David. Okay? Remember David and Goliath?
Yes. Beautiful.
This is just to help everybody to see the difference in height between Goliath and David. So Goliath have maybe 2.38 meters tall, according to what the Bible tells us, and that is 7 feet 9 inches. Okay, this is a big guy, very big guy, and David was probably half the size of this. Yeah. Because in the olden days, the Israelites were not very tall. So I would say that David was maybe 5.4 inches or 5.5 inches. Okay, so he will be getting to the waist of Goliath. And Goliath came from, also the Bible tells us, Goliath came from a family of the Anakim. Now,
yes.
It's interesting, Anakim. It's interesting that the Bible doesn't translate Anakim, perhaps because they think it's the name of the family. But Anakim in Hebrew means the giants. So Goliath was actually from a family of giants. We see the fight of David with Goliath. And then a few chapters afterwards, we see the fight of the soldiers of David fighting the brothers of Goliath.
Yes, yes.
So all of them were Anakim, very big people, giants, yeah? You can actually see the skull of one of these giants. You can see how big the skull is in comparison to the feet of the person that you can see over there, okay? Now, why didn't David actually get rid of the giants? Because the Philistines, but why didn't David get rid of the Philistines? It's because the Philistines actually hide David in their midst for a year and 4 months. Okay, so here you have the kingdom of David and Solomon, which actually you can actually see that holds most of the promised land that God promised to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And you can see that David allowed the Philistines to have their territory, to keep their territory. Why? Because they helped him to hide from Saul
yes.
in the mist. Yeah, you remember that he went,
yes.
he pretended to be mad, and the Philistines were sorry for him, and they let him live within themselves. Yeah, so they allow him to stay there. Yeah. Later on, we see in the Bible that David did fight against the Philistines, because the Philistines tried to get inland, and David will not let them. Okay, so David will chase them off. He will let them only stay in the areas of the Philistines. Okay, so the Philistines stay there for many centuries afterwards. All right, even though God said to the Israelites, you need to get them out. But nevertheless, the Philistines as a people ceased to be a recognizable ethnic group by the 5th century BC. The Assyrians actually killed them all. Okay, so they disappear from history, and maybe those that survive intermarried with others. So we don't know what actually happened to them. They disappear from the face of the earth, the Philistines. Okay, now, it is important to say that God asked the Jewish people, when they got into the promised land, not to settle until all of the land is delivered from the Canaanites. Okay? But the Israelites did not listen to what God had to say.
Yes.
And you can actually see what God asked the Israelites in Numbers 33, verse 55. And he said, but if you do not drive out the inhabitants of the land from before you, then it shall be that those whom you let remain amongst you, shall be irritants in your eyes and thorns in your side, and they shall harass you in the land where you dwell.
Yes.
Okay? So here we have that God is telling the Israelites, you have to get rid of everybody out of the land and occupy the land. This needs to be yours. Israel, at the time, 3,200 years ago, when they came out of Egypt in the desert, they did not listen to what God said. They did settle in the land. They didn't kick everybody out. And it was a constant problem with the inhabitants of the land. They were really a thorn in their sides. And the Philistines were a thorn in the sides of Israel. And literally, if you look at the map, you can see that Philistine is actually sitting on the side of Israel. Philistia, where the Philistine cities were sitting on the side of Israel. Yeah. Now, this territory of Philistia should have been for the tribe of Dan. Dan, when they threw the lots in Shiloh, all the tribes of Israel threw the lots to actually who was going to get what territory, it was the tribe of Dan that received this area. This is why you see that Samson is a Danite. Yeah. But what happened, the Danites could not defeat the Philistines, okay? And what do the Danites do? They move upwards. They go up to the north of the country. And this is when you see the description of the land in the Bible, from where to where. They say from Dan to Beersheba, because Dan is right up in the north, okay? And Beersheba is right down in the south. Wow. Okay? So from Dan to Beersheba. This is what the Bible is telling us. Okay? So Dan abandoned the area of the Philistines and they went north. This is what the Bible tells us. Okay? Now, almost all the Philistines actually die in the hands of Assyria. This is 722 BC. They disappear from the face of the earth. Okay? Now, we are going to jump. We're going to jump to modern day. I'm going to explain to you what happened with Gaza. Today. All the history of Gaza. Modern day, what's happening with Gaza. It's interesting that this is the area where we had the problems 3,000 years ago, and we are continuing having the same problems with the people of the land, yeah? And you should know that Israel actually received, okay, so Israel in the partition of the land of 1947, all the areas that you see in yellow was assigned to Israel by the United Nations. All the areas that you see in brown were assigned to the Palestinians by the United Nations, yeah? But what happens is in 1948, come the Egyptians, attack the land, okay? They take over Gaza, they take over this territory that was meant for the Palestinians, but the Egyptians actually take over Gaza, okay? Now what happens is we have problems. We have that the Egyptians are attacking us in 1967 with Nasser, with the president of Egypt in 1967, who encourages all of the Arab countries around us to come and fight against the Jews, to kick the Jews into the sea. They are not able to do this. Israel actually defeats all the armies that come to attack her in 6 days. And what happens with Egypt, I already explained in previous lessons, and just reminding people, is that Israel went and destroyed all the Air Force, the Egyptian Air Force on the ground, which was amazing, an amazing miracle. And therefore Israel has, in 1967, air superiority, okay? And what happens is Israel takes over Gaza and the whole of the Sinai and kick the Egyptians out of the other side of the Suez Canal. So Israel takes over all this area, okay, including Gaza, but the Egyptians and the whole of the Arab League said, one day we're going to get you, one day we're going to kick you into the sea, yeah? And that day almost came in the Yom Kippur War of 1973. The Egyptians and 13 other nations came and attacked Israel at the same time. They nearly kicked us out of here. They nearly conquered the land. But God, through miracles after miracles after miracles, allows us to defeat these countries and kick them out of here. Wow. Okay, I already explained the miracles. If you would like to go and see the wars and the miracles, you're most welcome to do. Okay, I'm just reminding people. Now, Israel in 1973 kicks out the Egyptians out of here, but the first country that actually makes a treaty, a peace treaty with Israel, is Egypt, with Nasser in 1978, 1979, okay? The Nasser realized that Israel, he's not going to kick out Israel, okay? He realized that even though in 1973 it was actually the largest armed forces that the world ever seen, and they couldn't kick out Israel, and therefore Nasser decided to turn around completely and accept and acknowledge that Israel is here to stay, okay? And decided to make a treaty with Israel. In that treaty with Israel, Israel decided to return the Sinai to Egypt, They said, we have no problem in you having Sinai back. Yeah, remember that Israel took Sinai in 1973, but they said, you can have it back. The only condition that Israel wanted from the Egyptians is that they do not have heavy armament in the Sinai Peninsula, because if they have heavy armament in the Sinai Peninsula, they might come and attack us again. Yeah? And since Egypt signs a peace treaty with us, we return the Sinai to the Egyptians. You see, we are accused in this world of saying that we come and take land from people, but Israel have said to the Arab world, if you sign a peace treaty with us, we will return the land. And indeed, they did so in 1978-79, because Egypt decides to sign a peace treaty with us. Here it is, okay? So Israel returns the Sinai. You can see that there are different areas, area A, B, and C. These areas are like this. Area A, the Egyptians are allowed quite a bit of armament. Area B, less armament. Area C was for the United Nations, yeah, so that there is a buffer zone between Egypt and Israel. The Egyptians agreed to this, the Israelis agreed to this, and from that moment on, we have a peace treaty with Egypt, which miraculously have held until today. Even though Nasser in 1978-79, he got murdered by his own people 2 days after signing a peace treaty with Israel. Yeah? But nevertheless, this peace treaty holds. The other thing is that what Israel wanted from the Egyptians as well was commerce. They wanted petrol and they wanted gas. And at the time, the Egyptians said yes. Today, we actually have found some gas reservoirs off the coast of Haifa. One of them is called the Leviathan, which is huge amount of gas. And therefore, today, we're actually selling gas to Egypt. It's going the other way now, okay? Which is very good. Okay, now, so 1967, Israel had control of Gaza. In 1979, Israel asked the Egyptians, when they signed the peace treaty, please take Gaza. You can have Gaza, Israel said to the Egyptians. And the Egyptians said, no way, Jose. Thank you very much. We do not want Gaza. So Israel had no other choice but to hold on to Gaza, and had like a military government, an Israeli military government inside of Gaza. But the casualties, the Israeli casualties inside of Gaza was horrendous. Almost every day, they were murdering an Israeli inside of Gaza, a soldier inside of Gaza. Ariel Sharon, in 2005, and I remember this, he said in the news, he said, I am tired to having to tell the parents that one of their children have died. I am tired of it. And Ariel Sharon made the mistake, the grave mistake in 2005 of unilaterally retreat from Gaza, get out of Gaza. In fact, they force the Israelis inhabitants were inside of Gaza. They forced them out of Gaza.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yes. And, these Israelis that were inside of Gaza, they made a Gan Eden of Gaza. with agriculture and with all the technological development. It was beautiful. And these inhabitants, they decided to leave everything intact for the Palestinians, so that when the Palestinians actually come into the area, they could actually enjoy the benefit of all this agriculture and all this amazing work that they have done. And what do the Palestinians do? As soon as they enter into the area, they destroy everything out of hatred. They destroy everything, Pastor. Wow. Okay? Now, Israel moves out unilaterally, gives the Gaza Strip to the Palestinians, and in 2007, there is elections in Gaza, and Gaza falls into the hands of a terrorist organization called Hamas.
Yes.
And this is a disaster. This is a disaster for Israel, and this is a disaster for the Palestinian people, the civilians that are inside of Gaza. Because Hamas is a declared terrorist organization by the United Nations. These are terrorists. And if you do not do what they tell them, you know, they're totalitarians, like all of the Arab world, really. And these guys, it's like this: if you don't do what I tell you that you need to do, we kill you. If you don't believe like we do, we kill you. If you actually give information to Israel, we kill you. There's no problem for them to kill their own people, okay? And this is a disaster for us. Why? Because from the moment that Israel gives back the Gaza Strip to the Palestinians, is one war after another. They never stop sending missiles to us. And from time to time, we have Ashkelon and Ashdod, everybody on the ground because of the missiles that are coming from Gaza. Okay? So we have already 3 wars in Gaza, with Gaza, 2008, in 2012, and in 2014. And let me tell you a little bit about the 2014 war, because this war is where my son was. And I want to tell you what happened in this war. And it's amazing. The Palestinians throw at us 5,600 missiles and rockets against Israel. 5,600.
Wow.
Out of that 5,600, 3 people die. One Israeli Jew that was in the border with helping the soldiers on the border, the Israeli soldiers. Another Arab Palestinian who was in Israel, and a volunteer that was in Israel. 3 people died out of 5,600 rockets. This is, you know, the numbers are miraculous.
Wow.
The Israeli news, they go to the Palestinians and they said, look, why don't you put the right coordinates? And the Palestinians are saying to them, well, we put the right coordinates, but the God of Israel takes it away.
Wow.
Even the Palestinians know that this is the case, and they're still throwing us rockets, yeah? Some of the rockets, Pastor, they turn around and they go back to Gaza.
Wow.
You see them turning around on the air and going back to Gaza. It's amazing.
Wow.
Okay? Or they land in places that there's nobody. And let me tell you another thing. There was a missile that they threw at us, the size of a bus of 45 people. Do you see those big buses?
The big bus, yes.
Big buses, the size of a bus.
Wow.
This missile was heading towards the train station in Tel Aviv at the rush hour. And we have the Iron Dome, which is a system. Let me see if I got a picture
Please.
Of it. Just one second. It is, this is the Iron Dome. There is actually a system that determines the velocity of the missile and the direction of the missile, and then it throws a rocket at it to explode it in the air.
Yeah.
Okay? This is the Iron Dome. Now, the Iron Dome has been made with Israeli and American technology. And what happens is that the soldier that was manning this Iron Dome throws a rocket at this massive missile, and he misses it. And then he throws another rocket at the missile, and he misses it. A few seconds later, this missile is going to land at the train station in Tel Aviv at rush hour, the main train station.
Wow.
This young man, he's on the phone to emergencies to tell them to go to the train station because this missile is heading towards them. And what happens is, in that split of the second, a wind got hold of that missile, turned it around, and threw it into the sea.
Wow.
And this was in all the newspapers.
Wow.
In Israel.
Glory to God.
Yeah, miracles after miracles after miracles after miracles.
Glory to God.
My son, he was in 2014, he was a tank driver. And you have in an Israeli tank unit, you have 12 tanks, 4 soldiers in each tank. Now they gathered together in the Gaza war, and they said, who's going to go first? Who's going to go in first? And my son put his hand up. You know, if I knew it, I would kill him myself, literally, okay? Because the first tank is actually the most in danger one, yeah? So he goes in first. All the other tanks are actually following. And as soon as he gets into the Gaza Strip, he feels earth coming on top of his tank. And they don't know what it is. And then a jeep coming from behind, running to the front where the tank of my son is. And they say to them, did you know that they throw at you an anti-tank missile?
Wow.
And my son and all his friends, they said, no, we didn't know, yeah? So what happens is that this anti-tank missile went into a mound of earth right before the tank. He exploded in that mound of earth, and earth came on top of the tank. So my son was protected. Not only my son was protected, all of the members of the tank unit, not one of them got killed in that war. Yeah? God protected these kids amazingly. You know, we have stories of bullets flying around them. Yeah, they're actually heading into Gaza and they have bullets flying around them and it doesn't touch them.
Your house or the apartment had to have double protection, no?
Yes, yes. All the apartments, we have a secure room.
Yes.
In all the houses in Israel, by law, you have to have a secure room. And when we have missiles thrown at us, then we have the alarm in the country and we need to go and hide in the secure room. This is what we do. Okay?
Wow.
Okay, so we have all different kinds of missiles. As you can see, rockets that is thrown at us from the Gaza Strip in different times that they do this. And just to give you an example of what we get absolutely every year. Mm-hmm. For example, in the war in 2008, we received 3,278 missiles from Gaza. Okay? In 2012, we had another war, 2,248. And 2014, this was made in 2014 and the beginning of 2014, so they don't have all the rockets that they threw at us, which is 5,600 rockets in that war, okay? So, and this is constantly, even to today, they're sending missiles constantly, and they terrorizing the Israeli communities that are on the border. So we have a continuous struggle with these people. Now, every time that they throw a rocket at us, of course, we have to react. Would you, Pastor, let other people throw missiles at the United States? You will not let them. You can't let them. So Israel goes and deal with it. They don't deal with. Israel protects the population. They only get where the armaments are, where the military bases of Hamas are. This is what Israel is destroying every time that we have rockets thrown at us. We have no other choice. To this, the United Nations saying that we use disproportionate force. What is disproportionate force? Is it okay for them to throw us missiles? We cannot defend ourselves? This is what the United Nations is saying. Israel cannot defend itself.
Half Gaza from Tel Aviv.
About 2 hours drive, not very far. Okay, so they can, with the missiles that they have, they can actually reach Tel Aviv. You can see where Gaza is, and you can see where Tel Aviv is.
Yeah, it's close.
Okay, very close. So they can reach the whole of Israel, really, with their missiles. So it's a problem. It's a problem. Okay, now, we have the accusation of actually controlling Gaza. Remember that we are out of Gaza. We're not in Gaza anymore. But we help the Palestinian population in every way we can. And this information that you have here is during the Gaza war in 2014. This is in August the 21st, 2014, between 7:30 and 4:30 p.m. Israel sent to Gaza 178 trucks of food, medicine, and general supplies to the Palestinians. We send them 174 tons of gas. We send them 548,000 liters of fuel. Mm-hmm. And what do? They throw at us 68 rockets in that period of time.
To say thank you.
Thank you. Is this insane or what? Israel is providing electricity and water to Gaza, and yet they don't recognize Israel. They hate Israel with a vengeance.
Wow.
And they want to get rid of us.
Wow.
Why doesn't Israel cut the supply?
Wow.
Because we will be accused of murdering the Palestinian population.
Yeah.
But they're allowed to throw us rockets. They're allowed to hate us. Can you see this? This is a double standard from the United Nations totally.
The United Nations never talked to the Palestinian Authority people about all the rock he sent to Israel?
No.
Wow.
Whenever they have a criticism, it's a criticism about Israel. And Israel is the only democracy in the Middle East.
Yeah.
Israel doesn't kill its own citizens. I mean, it's absolutely balmy. This is, the opposite of what they should say. They should they should be praising Israel for helping a Palestinian population led by Hamas, even though they hate us with a vengeance. They should be
this
praising us.
This is something a lot of people here don't know about. You know, the quantity hope Israel give it to the Palestinian people. This is why I believe this program is very important, because you live in there, you know the situation. I can give you my opinion because I never go to Israel. I'm not living there, bro. And the new or the yellow new put Israel like the abuser, and the Palestinian is the people had Israel abused the Palestinian people. This is
a lie.
Yeah,
another lie.
If we know
that we're abusing them.
If we know this is not the true history, because
this is just insane, Pastor. It's insane. It's the opposite.
Yes,
it's the opposite. We're trying to help them.
Either Sister Sonia, many Christian people believe Israel abused the Palestinian people. If we know this is not true.
It's not true. Look at this. In August the 22nd, 2014, we sent them 54 trucks of food. By the way, all this food that Israel is sending the Palestinians is free of charge.
Wow.
All this medicine is free of charge. And what does Hamas do? They get all this stuff and they sell it to the Palestinians to make money.
Wow. Wow.
88 tons of gas, 1,004 liters of fuel. Look at this, Pastor. Are we helping them? Are we the aggressors here?
Sister Sonia, the Israel government never charged for the medicine, the gas, the food, never?
I don't know about the gas and the fuel and the electricity and water. I think that they do pay for that.
Something. They pay something.
If I'm not mistaken. But the food and the medicine, they don't.
Okay.
Okay? But poor Palestinians, they have to pay Hamas.
Oh, yeah.
It's just crazy. Okay? So here are the truckloads of food that Israel sends into the Gaza Strip, and look what they send us.
Wow.
This is actually Hamas members throwing rockets at us. Yeah? And actually Hamas is being financed by the Iranians. The Iranians are actually providing them with all the weapons. Yeah? Now, this actually will happen in 2014 when my son was involved in this war. And this is a member of Hamas hanging their children, their own children,
it's a criminal,
into buildings.
It's a criminal.
Because inside the buildings they have weapons. So
wow.
They use these weapons, they use these civilians to protect their weapons. And when the Israelis see these kids hanging in there, one, they get them out, get them out of there. And two, they will not bomb if they have children hanging in there. And then they blame Israel for human rights abuses. And look at this, Pastor. Look at this. Yeah? Now, when Israel uses weapons, he uses to protect people.
These two children, these are Palestinian children.
These are Palestinian children in the Gaza Strip. This is what happened in 2014. This is exactly what happened.
Wow.
Horrendous what they do.
Wow.
They teach these children hatred against the Jews in the schools. They teach them to be terrorists from the moment that they're children.
Wow.
And look what they're doing to them. They can't care less about these children. They consider it a necessary war, how can I put it? a necessary war casualty. This is what they say.
Wow.
And they hang their children in there. Terrible. Now, when Israel uses weapons, we use it to protect the civilians. That's what we're doing all the time. We're trying to protect Israel, okay? But when Hamas, that's the opposite. He uses civilians to protect their weapons, yeah? And what do they do in 2014? They put their weapons in mosques, and they put the weapons in hospitals, because according to the international law warfare, you cannot destroy a religious site, and you cannot destroy a hospital. Yeah? So in that way, they keep their weapons safe from the Israelis.
They have like an underground tunnel to deal with the weapons.
Yes. This is the underground tunnel. They put the armament underneath. This is what the Palestinians, the Hamas, in Gaza. Actually, there is a city, an underground city in Gaza, because of the fear of the Israelis destroying their weapons.
Wow.
Tunnels that they make.
Wow.
Tunnels to actually get into Israel. And Israel have developed the technology to prevent these Hamas people from getting into Israel, yeah? Would you let them get in? This is what the United Nations is saying, that we're blockading the Gaza Strip. What other choice do we have? Do we let them get in? Do we let them kill our own citizens? This is ridiculous, yeah? What we need a solution in Gaza. We do not have a solution in Gaza. They still throw us rockets and missiles from time to time, and Israel goes and have to retaliate. We haven't got a solution. And all the time that they teaching their children to hate Israel like they do, even to today, we will continue with this conflict, because it just propagates to the next generation.
Yes, it's called go inside. I think this go from the blood. I think this inside the blood to each Palestinian people.
Yeah. What should we do? Should we kick them out of there? If we kick them out of there, we have the whole world
coming against Israel.
Yeah. They will say this is an ethnic cleansing. But we cannot do that.
Sister Sonia, today we have the commemoration. 6 million people died for the killed by the Germany and Allied and Europe. How many people, how many survivors we have in Israel from the Holocaust?
We had about 500,000 Holocaust survivors. This happened, of course, when the Second World War finished. In 1945, we had 500,000 survivors. Most of them came to Israel after the war, and most of them are dying now. The COVID-19 pandemic have dealt a very big bad blow to the Holocaust survivors. We had about 800 Holocaust survivors that died during the past 10 months because of
something we like to do. I remember you do the program with Brother David, but it's very important to you bring a couple program, one in Spanish, one in English, about the Holocaust, because we need to learn more We need to learn more from this.
So we did one in Spanish. You remember that?
Yes, I remember. You and David.
Alemania Nazi. Yes. So I can do it in English for next week. So we can do the Holocaust next week, Pastor.
Because people had to know about that. More to that, something surprised me. I speak to lot of American people. He don't know too much about history.
Wow.
This is something people, more people from Latin America know more about universal history than the people from United States. I see people either from United States, people don't have too much history. You don't know too much.
Yes.
It is
okay, so definitely. Next week we'll talk about the Holocaust then.
Please.
I'll bring it up in English. Yes, sir.
Giving my praise is 12:04. I think this is a bless every week to have you and Alma Radio. This big bless.
Thank you very much. Thank you. אלוהי אברהם, אלוהי יצחק, אלוהי יעקב, אנו מודים לך, אבא, שאתה ברכת אותנו, שרוח קודשך איתנו. אני מבקשת בשם ישוע המשיח שאתה תברך את הרדיו, שיגדל עם כל האנשים ששומעים את הרדיו, ואתה תיתן להם את כל הידע והמידע שהם צריכים להמשיך עם העבודה המצוינת שהם עושים. אני מבקשת שתברך את פסטור צ'מפן וכל המשפחה שלו, ותודה אבא על הכל, בשם ישוע משיחנו, אמן ואמן.